Yep. What's going on, everybody? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? It's just another day, y'all. Another day here in the beautiful city of Jacksonville, Florida. Let me get my mic. Let me get everything situated over here. Let me get everything right. Beautiful city of Jacksonville, Florida. Making things happen over here. Feeling real good. Man, I'm so excited about tonight's show. I'm so very, very excited about tonight's show, y'all. I've been looking forward to this show for a very, very long time. Me and this gentleman I'm going to bring on to podcast tonight, known each other for many years, man. I call him one of my mentors in the game. This gentleman is truly a pioneer. We're going to talk about some stuff tonight. We're going to talk about some great stuff. But before I go there, y'all, I'm so excited to have another opportunity to be on the podcast, sharing some wisdom, sharing some thoughts, sharing some things. I'm so grateful that God's given me the opportunity to be in this moment, to be in this season of my life, just being able to bring light, focus, energy to the masses. I'm so very, very thankful. It's Thursday night, y'all. Tonight, it's like every other time. It's gonna be good. I've been looking forward to this conversation for such a very, very long time, man. It's been a long time coming. And tonight's not going to be any different, you know. So welcome back to another episode of On the Grind with Chris Allen. I'm your man, Chris Allen. You know, this show is where we dive deep into the mindset, strategies, and habits that separate the greats from the average. And tonight, no different. We have a true powerhouse that's going to come on tonight and share some wisdom. Our guest tonight, he has over 35 years of experience in sales, marketing, and personal development. He's a multi-million dollar earner, a VIP and the Champion Circle Award winner, and a man who has shared the stage with the best of the best in the game. His no BS, straight talk, no chaser approach to transform the lives of thousands. And tonight, he's here to do the same for you. So if you're ready to break through the limits, shift your mindset, and unlock the next level of success, let me tell you something. You're in the right place, at the right time, in the right season. So ladies and gentlemen, let's get to it. Let me welcome to the stage, to the podcast, my guy, Mr. Tony Fleming.
Right, let's go.
Welcome, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to be here, man.
Man, you made that introduction so very, very easy, man, with your poise, your grace, what you've accomplished in such in your life. You make that introduction so very, very easy, and I thank you for it.
Well, hey, I thank you for having me. I hope that tonight that people can receive some information that can help them in life, because I love talking about the things we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah.
I've got so many years of experience that sometimes it's so much running through my head as I'm talking that I feel like maybe I don't get out enough. You know what I'm talking about? It's like I see people now who are more, I guess, internet savvy or more screen savvy, and they know how to, you know, I'm the guy that I'm old school. I get in front of the room, give me the microphone, and I get the pacing.
Right.
Oh man, all kind of stuff come out. But so now, so I got to focus on this screen and make sure I do this thing right tonight. But I got a lot that we can talk about, man.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to be here tonight, Chris. I actually ran across the old interview we did. You know how it comes up?
Man.
It pops. I don't even know where I saw it, but it popped up somewhere on my screen.
Right.
You know, we were standing outside the Renaissance at the airport, and the planes was flying over. And we did that little interview anyway, man. That had to be what? That had to be
that was like
oh my God.
That was 2009.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
Yeah, that was
2009,
like 2009,
2008.
2010.
Man, that's 15 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. That was a
Wow.
long time ago.
Yep. Yep.
Long time ago. Well, look, things have changed. Things have happened, man.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start, man. So where you from?
Okay.
Where you from?
All right. Well,
Let's go back.
okay. I grew up actually in Birmingham, Alabama. I've been in Atlanta now almost, 30 some years though. But I grew up in Birmingham. My mother's still there. It's only 2 hours away. And that's one of the reasons why I'm still in Atlanta, because when my father passed, I realized I wanted to go further east, like up DC way, but my sister's in New Orleans. And so I wanted to be close to my mother, because when my father passed, I just wanted to be able to go if she needed me, get there. So I stayed in Atlanta, and I've been here the whole time. And, a little bit about my background. I went to Jackson State University, the Jackson State. When I graduated, I came to Atlanta, and, I worked, my degree was in communications. So I came here looking to do something, maybe in radio or TV. I kind of hate that I kind of hate that I didn't have the patience to really stick with it. But then again, if I didn't, I probably wouldn't be talking to you now, and we probably would have never met. But, instead of me sticking with, starting at the bottom of, because I really wanted to be Tom Joyner before Tom Joyner. You know what I'm saying? When people weren't really talking about that kind of stuff, I wanted to be on the radio and talking and, playing music. But I don't think during that time, I don't even know if Joyner was out during that time. I was trying to, so I didn't want to wait. And I found out about sales. And so I jumped right into sales and started making money right away. Got, worked for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. That's when the paper was huge. The newspaper was huge. And I was selling ads for the new, full-page ads, different, I was out cold calling, knocking on doors. And so, I went on from there into, AT&T, worked in AT&T for a while, like 6 years. And that's my sales. So, I never really had what you would call a real job. It was sales. I mean, if you want to call it a job, but I was in the field all the time. I never was in an office. I would come in and then go right back out. And so I always been in sales or some kind of, start doing home-based business and things of that sort. But, my mind has always been independent-like, So I remember when I first got to Atlanta and I graduated that, the Atlanta Journal wouldn't hire me because I didn't have experience. I didn't have sales experience. And I told them, this is catch-22, man. I just graduated, so I'm going to have sales experience. And they said, well, you need to have some sales experience. So I went out at the time. I don't know if you ever heard of this, but there was a company called the Black Pages.
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah, the Black Pages. It was like a little orange magazine that they put out every month in Atlanta, and it was all the Black businesses. And so I was at a networking event. I'm young, networking. I see this table of, there was the Black Pages. And so the husband and wife, they were there at the table to own the company. I asked them, I said, could I work for you? Or I said, I don't have any sales experience. And they said, well, we don't pay a salary. If you want to get out here and hustle, we'll give you commission, which was kind of like 50% of whatever I sold. So I went out to get experience so I can go back to the newspaper and say, look, I got experience now. And I went out knocking on doors, cold calling, getting rejected. And, I can't say it was that I loved it, but it always was intriguing to me to get out and try to, get somebody to understand what I'm doing, cold calling, walking in on them, dealing with the rejection and all that. And so, they let me do it. I was getting 50% of the sales. And what I realized, I said, who has money? And I thought the Black churches. So I started going to all the Black churches and saying, you need to have an ad in this, magazine, right? You know what I'm saying?
Good.
I had money. So
Mm-hmm.
when I got the first big church, which was Big Bethel on Auburn Avenue, and when I got them to do a full page ad, every other church I went to, I'm like, you can't not be in here. Big Bethel's in here.
Right.
So I was getting sales that way, got experience, and wound up going back to the Atlanta Journal, working, and then that was my sales took off from there. Went to AT&T, selling the phone systems. Back in the day, they had the Merlin and the partner systems. I sold that, cold calling. I was just intrigued with sales and meeting people and dealing with, rejection is not something fun, but I learned how to handle rejection. Good. And I think it's got me to where I am now. So
that's good. Before we jump into the we're gonna talk a lot about sales and marketing, because as a sales coach myself, marketing coach, we got a lot to talk about. Let's go back though. You said
Birmingham, yeah.
What part of Alabama? Birmingham?
Birmingham, yeah, Birmingham.
Birmingham. Okay, so to bring me through your childhood. What was Tony Fleming as a child? What was that kid? Was he into everything?
Oh yeah, I was the guy. I was, fifth grade. I threw papers. I saw a guy down the street that was throwing papers. His name was Erskine. I called Erskine. I said, Erskine, can I throw papers with you? He said, yeah. So I jumped in the back of his truck. We rolled the papers and threw them in the neighborhood. I was the guy. I didn't ask him how much he was gonna pay me. Whatever it was, he paid me. I did that. And so I always was that kind of person. Got me a lawnmower. I got my mother's lawnmower, and I started going through the neighborhood cutting grass. So I was that kind of person. Also,
so you knew early on entrepreneurship was the direction he was going. You knew early on.
I just like doing it. I don't know. My mother's always tell me too. She's like, you know how to make a buck, and you tight with it. She said you hold on to that dollar too. So like, she said you tight with it. But I always was. I remember 11th grade, a friend of mine called me and said, "Hey man, you remember those coupon books that had restaurants in it and all that?" He said, this was during summer, right before we had our football practice. He said, you want to sell some of these? I said, yeah. So we, they had this guy would pick us up in our neighborhood and then take us over to the wealthy neighborhood and drop us off. And so we would go door to door with these coupon books, selling coupon books. This is 11th grade. So I always been that guy that, I was different. Yeah,
it's amazing. I didn't even know that you did paper route, because I did the whole paper route as well. I was 9 years old, and I was the youngest. It's documented. I was actually the youngest paper route person in Indiana at that particular 9 years old. I had a dog on paper route. Okay. You know what I'm saying? So that's funny that we did that. Go ahead.
Yeah, but so I did that, and I'm the guy that be sitting around the room, during the holidays when your family's there and everybody go around. Well, what you want to be when you grow up? Everybody was doctor, lawyer, attorney. I said, I want to own a grocery store. They're like, why you want to own a grocery store?
How old was you at that time?
How old? 10th, 11th grade, something like that.
Got it.
But I'm going to tell you why. In my neighborhood, there was a guy named Mr. Cooper who had a little grocery store. It was like a little mini mart, little grocery store. It was in the neighborhood. Yeah. And my mother and father were both educators. And so we would go by that store, and I'd be in the front seat of the car. It's like one of those, shopping centers where you pull up to the door. Mm-hmm. So, and when you pull up to the door, you can actually look inside the shop. So when my dad was to pull up to the door, I'd be sitting there in the front seat, and I could look inside, and I noticed that the people who came in, some of them went to the back there, and they would go in that back door. It took me a minute to try to figure out what was going on. But what I realized, Mr. Cooper, he was a little loan officer too. So
he loaned money back.
Yeah,
y'all get it.
So he had the grocery store, and all the teachers would go back there and borrow money for him too. So I figured, I saw the money, how he was making money. So my thing was, I want to get one of those. I always wanted to have some kind of. So I was the strange one in the room. Why you want to own a store? Everybody want to be a doctor, lawyer, but that was my thing. So that was me growing up. You know, I always was somebody who just outside of the box.
Outside the box. So what about, because we're talking about in high school, were you athletic in high school?
Well, I played football. I don't know if you call me athletic, but I played football. Our high school was, we had a winning football record, you know, for 10, 12, 15, 20 years straight. Like we always won. So I played defensive end. I probably was, and my team, my high school team, I probably was 6 feet, about 190. And that was big for our team. You know, people like, you know, until we start playing these big dudes deep down in the backwoods, that was, you know, 280 pounds and 270 pounds. Right. But I played a little bit. Got a little, you know, all county awards and things of that sort. But it never went any further than that once I finished high school. Went to college. So
going to college to play sports wasn't even going to be
no. Okay. I went there. When I went to Jackson State, you know, two of my high school teammates went, and they were playing football, but I got there. The only reason I went to Jackson State was that my sister was already there 2 years before me, and because my plans was to go to Clark in Atlanta, here in Atlanta, but when I went there one weekend, I think Jackson State was playing Grambling or playing FAMU or something like that, and they had a party that weekend. That was it. When I went to that party, I told my sister, I said, I'm coming here.
At Grambling?
No, Jackson State.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so that's where I wound up going to Jackson State.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So when you got to Jackson State, you said did you already pick your major, or did you just knew I got to get?
I wanted to be in some kind of TV or radio, because that's why I was going to Clark. Clark had a radio station on campus. They still got that. They had the little van with the radio stuff on there. So that was my thing, communications. That's what I wanted to get into again, but I didn't have the patience to start from the bottom, not making a lot of money and work your way up. You know, when I got out, you know, I saw that I can make money in sales, and I kind of pushed that to the side and jumped into sales. But yeah, that was my thing at Jackson State. I was communications major. We going around, you know, they had a radio station on campus. Matter of fact, I worked at the radio stations to play jazz late at night. You know, I've been there from like maybe 9 p.m. to about 1 in the morning playing jazz, you know. So that was my thing.
So when did you realize that wasn't that wasn't the path? When did you realize that?
Well, when I got out and when I actually graduated and came to Atlanta and saw that people were making money in sales. Okay. And but it still should have been my path. Again, I wasn't patient enough to start from the bottom and work my way up. You know, when I saw the potential of making money in sales, I kind of ditched that and jumped right into sales. Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, that's it.
So take me back a little bit. So now you're in sales. So take me back to the early days of your sales, before the huge success, before the big stages. What was it like during that sales process for you? What was that season like for you? Before the big stages, before all the money, what was that season like for you?
Well, learning how to cold call, learning how to deal with rejection, learning how to get around a lot of roadblocks they had. You know, I used to go downtown Atlanta and go to the tallest building and work my way down. But, you know, you had to sneak in the building because they didn't want you selling anything. I forgot the little sign they used to have, but I used to work my way around that because I just love meeting people, being out and about, and getting experience with sales. So, I mean, I never really felt like I did bad in sales. I've always felt like I did great, but it was a learning curve of dealing with rejection and things of that sort. I was listening to audios in my car early in the day. I remember finding out about Earl Nightingale. And so I used to keep Earl Nightingale in my car all the time with the cassette tape. I took Tupac out and I put Earl Nightingale in. And
before you go any further, what was your favorite Earl Nightingale tape series? What was your favorite one?
Lead the Field, probably. I think it was Lead the Field.
Yeah, that's good.
I used to listen to that. I mean, I had Brian Tracy tapes. I remember Brian Tracy one of my favorites was Then They Call You Lucky. He used to say on each tape, you know, once you do everything you're supposed to do and you start winning, at the end of the tape series, at the end of that tape, he'll say, then they'll call you lucky. You know, as if you got lucky, but you did everything you're supposed to do. So I kept those in my car all the time, popping them out, throwing one in the back seat. And it kept me going during the times, you know, when I'm learning to deal with rejection and all that kind of stuff. I'll tell you a quick story. I remember, you know, I was in one building and I was in there because you had to go in there and mingle, you know, and sales for me. See, I was asking the other day, do people actually in corporate sales now really get out in the streets like they used to do? Or are they just sending out, you know, are they just sending out bots, or they just, you know, inboxing people or calling them? I don't know if they still are. I mean, if they still out here in the streets grinding like that. Right. But, you know, I used to go out and just, my goal was to, you know, knock on 30 doors, you know, company doors a day. So one time I was, and you go in and you know, you build relationships with the secretary and the people in the office. And I was building relationships with some of the young ladies. You know, I always had my little suit on, thought I was pretty fly. And I remember one day, was it one 4 buttons? One big 4 buttons? No, I didn't have my Bat Masterson suit on, but I just had on some little corporate. I had some 4 buttons though. But I remember one day I'm in there building relationships with the young ladies and, you know, bragging about what I'm doing and I'm trying to make a sale. And I remember this brother comes in the middle of me talking. I didn't realize that he was the owner. I just figured he was a guy that worked there. So he came in and in the middle of my conversation, I still remember this to the day. Remember my conversation, he says, young man, can I be straightforward with you? I said, yeah. He said, yeah. He says, will you get the hell out of my office? Oh, Chris, I was so embarrassed, man, because all the ladies was in there, you know, and I thought I was, you know, making some moves and stuff like that. And I still remember, I stepped out in the hallway and I thought to myself, this was running through my head. If I go to the car and I leave, it's over with. I probably won't ever do sales again. I just said, if I go to the car and leave. So my goal was, I'm gonna keep knocking on doors in this building until I get a sale or until I get an appointment. I didn't want to leave that building that day or go home without having a positive. So I kept knocking and kept knocking. I wound up making a sale and also getting another appointment. So when I got in the car to go home, I felt better about my whole situation, but I still saying to myself in the hallway, if I leave right now and this rejection could end my career. So I stayed and kept knocking, and the only reason that happened, I believe, is because of what I was listening to in the car. I was feeding my mind, starving my doubt. You know, I was feeding my mind, you know, early in my career, you know, so I believe that was what kept me going to this day. Because that was a hard blow, man.
Was there a moment where you looked around and thought to yourself, man, this ain't for me, or man, something got to change? What was that moment like?
See, I don't think that was the moment. That was the only moment. That was the only moment.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the only moment, because I remember seeing a lot of people quit. It never bothered me. I saw people saying they're going to be around. I come into the office and, you know, half of the sales staff is quit. I'm asking my sales manager, where are they? And he like, I remember when I was, you know, getting experience with the Black Pages, man, you know, since that was straight commission, they were dropping like flies every day. But I never looked at it as, you know, I'm going to stop doing it, because I just felt like, you know, it's numbers. If you keep going out knocking on doors and you keep meeting people, eventually, I still feel this way to this day, that, you know, you can always better yourself by doing more. Now, sometimes it's going to be much harder. You know, some things I'm going through now, that situations that I know from my experience then, that it's just, you just got to keep grinding, you know, because if you stop, you guaranteed not to win. So yeah, I never had that moment that you're talking about, except for that one when he told me to get the hell out of the office.
We get out. Well, you talk about when you used to come into the office, you see people, you know, dropping out like flies. You know, they not showing up no more.
Right.
Let me ask you, when you look back at that time frame, do you think or did you have a clear vision of what you wanted to accomplish back then, or do you think it was more in that season just kind of like figuring out, or like you mentioned, just a numbers game? Like, did you have a plan, or was it like, I'm just gonna do this until I can't do it no more?
Well, what do you mean plan? Like,
did you have did you set out like a vision? I know nowadays things are more methodical, things are more written down. We talk about vision boarding, we talk about write the vision, make it plain. Back then, were you into that type of mindset?
Let me tell you,
or was just figuring out?
Let me tell you. Let me give you this story. Bear with me for a minute. I got to tell you a story, and it goes back to when I was growing up. You know what? You back in the day, you used to ride your bikes, right? I had a little Schwinn 10-speed bike, and you know, all my partners in the neighborhood, we had bikes, so we would take off on the bicycle. And when you took off on the bike, your parents didn't know where you were because they couldn't reach you on no cell phone, and so you started riding them bikes. Man, we used to ride our bikes out miles and miles across town, and one of the places we used to go to was this Honda dealership. Now, when you mentioned Honda back in the 70s and 80s, you thought about motorcycles. You didn't really think about cars, you know what I'm saying? So it was Honda motorcycle dealership. So we used to go over to the Honda motorcycle dealership and look at those little motorcycles they had in there. We'd go in there as a kid, you know, 6th grade, 7th grade, sitting on the motorcycles.
Vision dreaming.
I'm about to tell you. We look at the motorcycles and then we would get brochures, and I would bring them back home, and we would talk. You know, man, when we get our motorcycle, because there was a guy named Johnny in the neighborhood had one, and so we figured when we get ours, we would talk about, you know, I'm gonna open the back gate, we're gonna come out, you know, we just, you know, just being a kid, and I go put those brochures on my wall. I had on my wall Earth, Wind and Fire albums. I had the Isley Brothers. I had Peter Frampton. So all my album covers was up on the wall. So I started pulling down some of the album covers, and I would put my Honda motorcycle brochures up there. And I would tell my mother I wanted a motorcycle. Now, bear with me a second. So in the summertime, I was going to a summer camp over at University of Alabama in Birmingham, not Tuscaloosa, but UAB in Birmingham. And we played flag football and all this, you know, stuff. So we were coming back one day from the flag football field, walking to the gym. My dad was gonna pick me up. Here come a motorcycle come flying by me. Now, I can't remember exactly whether the motorcycle ran the light or the car ran the light. But what happened, it was real ugly. All I remember is that the motorcycle hit the car door on the passenger side, and when it was all over with, the guy on the motorcycle was coming through the front windshield, and obviously it was over for him. He bled out. And so I remember going home telling my mother, I don't want a motorcycle, because I just felt like it wasn't no protection there. I just didn't want one. And she said, okay, she didn't want it, but about 2 days later, I sat down with her and I told her what had happened. Now she tells me, she said, you know, me and your father had gotten together and we had went down to the school board, because both of them were educators, and we had gotten approved for a loan, and we were going to get you that motorcycle the next week. And she was like, we were shocked when you came, because we were debating on getting it. They didn't want it, but I always talked about it. And she would come in the room and clean up. She would see my brochures on the wall. So, and she told me that. All right, fast forward 20 years. I'm on a conference call, and you know, in corporate, and we doing corporate sales, and so they mentioned vision board. I'd never heard of a vision board before. Wow. Never even. So they started talking about it, and when they finished talking about it, boom! I thought, 20 years ago, I had a vision board. That's what I was doing and didn't know I was doing it. Me and my partners talking about it, and it was so much of a vision board that my mother saw it. So she saw me putting it up. So it was a vision board for her too. That made her and my father get together and get this money. And so ever since then, the vision board and the visualization stuff is what I really talk about a lot, man. I remember putting together a vision board right after that and putting everything that I wanted on there. I even had the, since you trained, I know this is gonna be funny, you know, I had the my head on the bodybuilder, you know what I'm saying? So you know what I'm saying? I had that on there. You know, I had the home. I had a lot of stuff on that vision board. And what I did was it was pretty big, but it was like a mobile board. So I would take it with me if I go to the bedroom, I would take that board with me and sit it around so I could see it. If I'm in the room watching television, I took that little board with me. So I'm always looking at it.
Right.
And that went, you know, as I moved away from corporate America, got into the home-based business, I still had that vision board. And so I was already into the game before I even got into the home-based business. And, you know, long story short, probably within 3 years or 4 years, everything came to play. And almost everything on that vision board I accomplished. You know what I'm saying? And I know it was so amazing. Even when we purchased our home in 2005, it was kind of like, it wasn't, you know, we didn't build it, but the kind of like the builder let us design a lot of it. You know how you know, it was the last plot in the community. And so he kind of let us, and, you know, my wife was going through all that stuff, and she was, you know, trying to make the doggone, you know, a $500,000 house be like $1.5 million or something like that. So she was putting all the stuff in. And I remember walking into the foyer once that house was built, and I went back and looked on I had a vision binder too. Matter of fact, I keep it right here on my desk. This is funny. Look at this.
Wow.
I did this. This was copied in the Venetian Hotel, and they had a Success magazine, so they put my head on this suit. But as I flipped through this binder, I had the foyer. It was just like that when we moved into our house. I went back and looked. I'm like, I never showed it to her. She never saw it. But it goes back to the visualization thing, man. When you talked about I always was thinking about that. I always had plans on bigger goals. Yeah, I did have. Yeah, I was into the vision thing.
That was good, man. That's good. Yes. So when you talked about that early on, but you were doing it without actually knowing that you were doing it, and then you did the conferences. And I'm gonna go here. Visualization, law of attraction. These are words that we hear. And before we talk about your success, I'm gonna ask you some questions. Visualization, law of attraction, manifestation. These are all words that we hear when we're talking about success. How did that play into your belief system as a Christian? Because they're not talking about that in the church. They ain't talking about manifestation in the church. They ain't talking about law of attraction in the church. They ain't talking about universe in the church.
Right.
How do you merge these two worlds together? Or do you or don't you? How does that work?
Yeah, I do. I just don't talk about it to a lot of people because, you know, if you look at call those things that be not as though they were, it's already there. Yeah. You know, in the scriptures, all of, you know, it's saying it. It's already saying it. Speak it before it happens. You know, it's just that a lot of Christians don't look at it like that. They don't, because you're not really taught that way. But I always felt like, you know, I looked at scriptures in the Bible, and I looked at, you know, how people took those scriptures and how I looked at it. You know, I'm gonna tell you this. You know, I was always the outsider guy because, man, before people even caught on to it, I was a Reverend Ike guy. I'm gonna tell you, man. Growing up, we used to have these little speakers in a couple of rooms in our house. And so you turn the radio on, the speakers would be in there. And my mom and dad, they would run across flipping the radio to Reverend Ike. And they joked about him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. I kept saying, this man, he'll know what he's talking about. You know what I'm saying? This was, he was, you know, he was calling those things that be not as though they were then. So yeah, I always felt like, you know, the visualization and what you talk about, you bring about, I think all of that is spiritual. I think it's all a part of, but you know, it depends on how most people are not studying that way. They're kind of just listening to what somebody tells them or what a pastor might say. And you know how people looked at Reverend Ike, but everything that Reverend Ike talked about, now you hear that with Joe Dispenza. I mean, you got a lot of guys out here talking the same stuff Ike has been talking for years.
Back in the day.
Yep.
Yeah. You know, so, even when you talk about the preachers like a Joel Osteen,
right?
A lot of that stuff that, you know,
yeah,
Reverend Ike was talking about that back in the day.
Yeah. All of it, you know, they do it their way, but it came from Ike. You know, Ike was, you know, he was a guy far ahead of his time.
Do you still, even in this day and time, are you still big on law of attraction, visualization?
Oh yeah, right now to this day. I'm looking at situations in my life. I just said I had a couple of things happen to me in the last few years, and I'm saying to myself, it's somehow, and people don't like to admit this, I brought some of those things on. And it had to be from some of the ways that I was thinking or talking, because I always believe that a person's life can change for the good or the bad based on your eye gate, your ear gate, and your mouth gate.
That's good.
What you're seeing, what you're hearing, and what you're saying. And so that will bring about good or bad. So when I think about situations that I'm in that a situation I don't like, I'm thinking, what had I been saying for the last 6 months or the last year or two that attracted that? You know, and how do you get out of that? You reverse it. You go back and you start speaking good things, seeing good things, hearing good things. You know, I think the operative word is keep. You have to keep saying it. You have to keep hearing it. You have to keep seeing it. It ain't like you just do it at one time. You keep doing it. It's the keep part is where I think a lot of people drop off. And even myself, I'm talking to myself every day that I have to keep doing certain things, because obviously if I got a bad situation going on in my life, that means I kept doing certain things to draw that to me.
Okay.
I don't think things just happen like that. You know, I mean, you do have situations like, for example, 3 years ago, and I'm still feeling the effect of that to this day, I had a foot wound that came out of the blue. The doctors still can't tell me where it came from because I'm not diabetic. They went through all that stuff. And the foot wound, you know, I had to have 2 surgeries, major surgeries. But that was a huge setback. I mean, it just, in my mind the whole time, I kind of just stopped thinking about everything but my foot, because they were talking about, you know, cutting the toes off. They were talking about amputating my foot. You remember during the time when Dion got his toes cut off?
Really?
Around that time, I'm in the hospital, and they seriously talking about, we might have to cut your foot or your toes. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, I'm like, God, how did I bring this on me? Because I was exercising, I was working out every day, walking 3-4 miles. And then I realized it's certain things that I did after the wound showed up that caused the situations I was in, because I should have addressed it a lot earlier than I did. I let it drag on. And I thought that, you know, throwing these all natural stuff on it, you know, that wasn't going to do it. It got worse. And so those decisions that I made, I went back thinking, now, why did I make those decisions? So everything has to do with, you know, how you think, what you talk about, and what you're seeing at the time. So, yeah. So now I'm kind of going back and reversing some of those thoughts that I had. So, yeah, I definitely believe in the manifestation and the you know, calling those things that be not as though they were, and that you attract some things to you in your life.
That's good, man. Let's talk about, man. We go to the middle. We talk about some of the stuff that happened in your past or whatever. Let's go to the middle. When you was coming out in the sales and marketing side of it, you get a glimpse of what the network marketing space was.
Right.
We could talk about. I would love to hear that story about how you actually got into that particular space. But then I also want to lead right into when you got that first big level of real success.
Okay.
Like what that moment felt like for you.
How I got into it was I was actually in the mall ear hustling. So I was in the furniture store, and there was a young lady in there talking to this guy about starting a home-based business. And she was telling him that, you know, just for tax breaks, if you need it for that. And at that time, I didn't have I was working for AT&T. I didn't have a home-based business. I was making good money too at AT&T. So I pulled it to the side. I said, hey, you know, is that, you know, can you do that? She said, yeah, you can take advantage, you know, you can take advantage of the expenses that you normally do anyway, if you got a home-based business. And so you subtract it from what you're doing. And at the end of the year, man, you really good on your taxes. So she told me what it was. And then that's when I started thinking, oh man, that's one of them things, you know what I'm saying? So I you know what I'm saying?
And at this point, what year was this? What year was this?
This was around 94.
Okay.
Yeah, 94.
And up until this part, you ain't had nothing to do with M.
Oh no, that was one of them things. I just didn't
really,
you know, I was Saul. I was crucifying him until I had my road to Damascus, and I and I turned it to Paul. But yeah, at that point, I was, you know, nah. And so when she told me about that, I said, okay, let me look at this as a business. I ain't gonna do it. You know, I'm not gonna do it, but I'm gonna set up me a business, because it was a young lady calling me every day at that time, leaving me messages on my you know, message machine. You know, you have those answer machines where you come home and push the button and then all of them will play. And this lady here was selling cellular phones to the AT&T employees at the time. And so I would ignore and delete her message. And then finally, when I saw this lady talk about home-based business, I hit her back. I said, is your business a home-based business? She said, yeah. I said, okay, when the next meeting? And she told me. And at the time, I was living in Montgomery, Alabama, and the next meeting was in Birmingham, which is 70 miles away. So, but I said, I'm going to go and sign up, because I need me a home-based business, because I'm going to save on my taxes. And so I wound up going. And the funny thing about it, that night, at the end of the meeting, I said, okay, I'm ready. She said, well, you can't join. I said, why not? She said, well, I'm not in. I said, like, you've been calling me for the last. She's like, I was waiting to get some people first before I decided.
Right.
This is no lie. I wound up paying for her to join so I can join.
So you can join.
Yeah, so it was something like $49. That's back in the day when you could write a check.
Yeah.
So I wrote a check for her, and I wrote a check for me, because I wasn't gonna drive no 70 miles and go back empty-handed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I wound up getting started that way. And my belief grew later on, because I met this dentist that was doing well. And so I said, let me give this thing a shot and see if it really works, because, you know, I sat down and talked to him for about an hour, and he went through everything that he was doing. And so, yeah, that's how I kind of got into it. Now, I tried for about 6 months and wound up letting it go. And then I had to realize, wait a minute, that ain't why you started. You started for your tax breaks. So you just can't let it go. You know what I'm saying? Right. You still got to, you know, do it for your tax breaks. You got to, you know, you got to show at the end of the year that you got some little expenses and things of that sort. So I wound up finding somebody else, a young lady who used to work for me at AT&T, kept calling me about what her boyfriend was doing and how he was making money. So I wound up getting involved with that, and it took off from there. I met her boyfriend, and he was doing super well in this industry and making, you know, tons of money, which was Chris Oliver.
Okay.
So yeah, so
The
Chris wound up,
CEO.
yep. So, and that company was ACN, and so he wound up training me, and it took off. And after that, it's just been booming. It just took off.
So ACN was the company that you actually felt your biggest success? Was that
No,
the biggest?
probably it had to be Tahitian only. No, I wouldn't.
Okay, Tahitian.
Yeah, ACN. I had some success in ACN though, and I had after that I had success in every company I was involved. One of the great ones that I got started with was a company called TCN. They wound up going out of business though, but TCN was prepaid phone cards.
Okay.
And I made a lot of money with them in the first 2 years, and then they wound up going out of business because the owners was, they were buying cars and Lamborghinis and just, and
doing stupid stuff.
Yeah, I remember doing a meeting in New York, and my mentor, my upline called me and said, he said, "What you doing?" I'm about to go in this meeting in New York. I'm up here. I said, about 100 people in the room. He said, "Well, I wouldn't do it." I said, "What do you mean you wouldn't do it?" I said, "There's 100 people. He said, "Well, let me talk to you for a minute." I said, "No, I got it." He said, "Well, I'm with the owners now." I said, "Okay." Then he said, "Well, company out of business." I'm like, "What?" There's 100 people in here. How the company out of business?
Right.
And yeah, so that company went out of business, and then I wound up, rolling into Tahitian only. I was in there for about 8-9 years. Yeah.
So what was you don't have to say the company, but what was that moment for you? Your big success moment. What was your biggest success moment where you realized, oh shoot, like I'm here, like I'm in this thing now?
Well, I kind of that was, shoot, ACN. I kind of felt like that was, we had a lot of success in that,
Yeah.
Doing what 90% of the country wasn't making, you know what I'm saying? So, now you hear people talking about they making $1 million a month, $1 million a day, and $1 million, hey.
But back then in the 90s, we weren't talking about that.
No, we weren't talking that. No. But the money that we were making, that was good. Still good money. But if you compare it to what a lot of people are saying now, which, some people exaggerate a lot, which was amazing how, but people want to believe some of the stories. But yeah, at that time, it was, I think ACN was really where I saw big things, and I saw that this thing was more than just a tax break.
Right. Did you, the moments once you hit that level of success, what were some of the challenges that you weren't expecting based upon the success that you hit?
People hating, people not wanting you to win, and they doing everything they can. Now, I think sometimes people just consider themselves helping you, thinking they helping you by giving you advice, and then some people just feel like they can't do what you're doing. So the goal would be to, throw roadblocks and put glass in front of you so that you can't, so that was one of the, things when you start realizing that you're excited about something, you winning, but then, you see other people, they are not excited for you. And so you have to deal with that and learn. And that goes back to the mindset and personal development. I was always feeding my mind. I think the industry for me was that, I'm more of a teacher than anything. I don't consider myself a businessman. How some people say there's a bit. No, I'm just more of a teacher. I love talking about this stuff. I love talking to people about it. The mindset stuff and all that is what kept me going. I don't think that I could have gotten the knowledge that I have and the experience that we talk about with mindset and personal development anywhere else but, in the home-based business arena.
Where did that love, that mindset, the love for the mindset, coaching, personal development, where did that stem from?
I don't know. It was, you know what? I remember doing a training. It was 1,000 people in the room, 1,500 people. And I get on the stage and I just start talking. and doing the mindset stuff. And I remember a guy sitting in the back of the room. You remember James Tucker?
Yeah.
He came to me afterwards. He said, man, you know what? He said, you're a teacher. And then I realized that's what I am, not a coach, but a teacher. And then I went back and thought about it. Guess who else were teachers? My mother and father.
Wow.
So that's what, that's where that came from. It's just there's a different type of teaching, but I got that from them. I'm just believing that's where it came from, being around in that environment. So the home-based business arena gave me the ability to do that. And the mindset part, man, it had to come from probably my mentor. The only mentor I ever had was rest in peace, was Ty Best. And Ty was a guy that he got me to reading. He started me to reading different books. Every time I used to call him and complain, he would tell me, pick up this book and read certain pages. And I realized it wasn't the pages. It was just me reading the book. Once I started reading it, it kind of like a baby pacifier, would calm me down, because like, this is what you go through to win in life. You got to go through that. You got to keep your mind right. Yep.
Did you ever going through this process, through your journey, ever have that feeling of imposter syndrome? Even when you was hidden and you was winning big, did you ever have that imposter syndrome?
Give me a better example better word when you say imposter syndrome.
So I know as hidden levels of success sometimes, of the feeling of, man, am I really who they say I am? Am I really that guy on the stage that's hitting these levels? Everybody's out here saying, I'm this, I'm that. Did it ever come a time where you was like,
all the time? I still, to this day, that's why I keep reading to feed my mind, because, those thoughts going to always creep in. You know what I'm saying? I never was that person that, and I don't believe, just my opinion, I think that happens with everybody, whether you Donald Trump or somebody, it's with everybody. You can say that you don't feel that way, but I believe that's in everybody's mind. That's why I'm always feeding my mind or listening to something
to stay at it. So what routines, what habits did you actually put in place to combat those thoughts, or to always make sure that you stay locked in to what the ultimate goal is? What things did you actually put in place that Tony Fleming is going to do these things in order to make sure that I stay laser beam focused?
I don't think I put anything in place. I just made it my life. I made it a part of my life, which is listening to audios, watching, now you can just watch all this stuff for free. But I remember I used to buy all that stuff. Everything that came out, whether it's a DVD or a CD or, any of the, mindset and personal development stuff, I just kept feeding my mind and starving my doubt. So it became a part of my life. It wasn't something where how some people plan it. It was just a part of me. You know what I'm saying? I always was listening to audios. I always been listening to, I remember one time, man, I guess 2006 or something, I was up in Chicago doing a meeting, and we was in North Chicago, and I saw this sign that says Niles, Illinois, and which was, I guess, about 40 miles outside of Chicago, something like that. And I was riding with my partner. I said, man, is this Niles, Illinois? Can we go? He said, yeah, it's about 40 miles away. Now, for me, everything that I bought and purchased and listened to, Earl Nightingale, that's where their office was. Nightingale and Conant is in Niles. Man, I talked to dude, the driver there. We walked right in the office. And when I walked in, I started talking to people. Man, the warehouse was huge. They got stuff. It was like going into a museum for me. And so I started talking to the people there, and one of the managers came out, and we were talking and she said, "What's your name?" I said, "Tony Fleming." She went back. She said, "I know the same name from somewhere." I said, "I done bought everything in the house."
Get them all stuff.
So she knew me from that. I was ordering everything.
Right,
She's like,
right.
She's like, you one of our biggest customers.
Wow.
I mean, I had bought all kind of stuff. It was amazing.
Wow.
That, you know, when I walked through there and listened to her tell, I didn't realize how much I really bought. You know what I'm saying? So I always, to answer your question, I always kept my mind, you know, on personal development and mindset and stuff like that.
Do you, I know you say it's always a time, but do you think there was a specific moment where you realized that mindset was the key to leveling up? And not just a skill or a strategy? Was there a moment?
I don't think it was a moment for me. Okay. I think I know when I first heard Earl Nightingale, I was in my sales manager's office and I was waiting on him and he had Earl playing in the background. And I'm like, who is this guy? I'm like, he make a lot of sense, you know, and I remember literally begging my sales manager to let me take that series home with me. He didn't want to let it out, you know, and you got to understand this was cassettes. So I took it home and went and bought some Scotch tape and Maxell. I was up all night. You know, you had a dual cassette players. So I'm up all night. You couldn't burn it like a CD.
Right.
So I'm copying everything.
You
know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Right.
Took it back to him. And so those were the tapes I had in my car.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
What do you think of a particular mindset shift that you had that took you from good to great?
Well, I mean, it has to be that, you know, the eye gate, the ear gate, and the mouth gate. It has to be that for me, is that what you see every day, what you hear every day, and what you say every day, it will take you to different heights. It'll take you, but the thing is, you have to keep doing it. And going back to that, it ain't what you say, is what you keep saying. Not what you do is what you keep doing. Not what you hear is what you keep hearing. And so you can, in this day and time, you can easily get off track. You get sidetracked by all kind of stuff out on social media. You get sidetracked. And so you stop doing certain things. But I believe that if you stay consistent with it, you know, what you're hearing, what you're saying, what you're doing on a regular basis, that anybody can turn their life around. Anybody can change. And if I still believe this, if you're in a hole or a rut, it's something that you did. So I'm talking to myself every day, is that where did I get off track at? If I'm in what did I do? What do I need to do to reverse this and then stay consistent with it? I just believe that that's the key to anything, is what you hear, what you say, and what you see. And a lot of people don't, you know, probably believe that, because you can see what they watch all the time, what they hear all the time. You know what I'm saying? So
right.
You know,
that's, you know, you may have just answered, but I'm gonna ask it again. You might have something different. If someone is listening to this podcast right now, they listen to our voices, they're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, whatever it is right now, and they're stuck in some type of negative cycle, what's the first thing, if they came to you, what would be the first thing that Tony Fleming would tell them, you need to do this in order to break out of it?
I just answered it. The same thing I'm doing now. Okay. I got situations that happen, going back to the foot, you know, up to what it's doing now. So I'm reversing that process. But you gotta, first of all, come up with what you want. Because remember, somebody just sent me a video yesterday of talking about that. You know, you don't see through your eyes, you see through your brain.
That's it.
You see what I'm saying? So
right.
you gotta first mind sight over eyesight.
Right.
So first thing you gotta do to get out of that rut, you gotta start visualizing and seeing what you want and where you want to go. Then you got to start talking about it. Then you got to start putting yourself in an environment. And, you know, a lot of times people say, well, I don't have the environment. Well, you do now for free on YouTube. You can go start watching, and guess what? YouTube picks up, the algorithm picks up what you want. Right. So you'll get more and more of that. If all you getting is the booty videos, that means that's what you're watching all the time. But if you start getting mindset and personal development and mental toughness videos, that means that's what you're focusing on, and they're gonna give you what you want. They're not trying to take you somewhere you don't want to go.
Right.
Because their whole goal is to keep you, on their page. And
Right.
so if you want to start growing and changing, you got to start with your thoughts and what you visualize. And I hope that is an answer for people. I don't know if it is or not, but I just believe it's eye gate, mind gate. Eye gate, ear gate, mouth gate.
You said a mouthful, man, because I know, in leadership, sometimes you have to be able to, if you want to change your position, like you talked about, first you got to realize where you want to go. You have to visualize where you're trying to go to first. If you and I get in the car, we gotta have a place we're trying to get to first.
Right.
We ain't gonna just get in the car and start driving, because pretty soon we're gonna end up going nowhere. Right?
No.
If we want
so when you put it in GPS, you telling them where you want to go.
You gotta tell them where you want to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Because it says where are you and where you want to go to.
That's the two things that's on it.
Yeah.
That's the two most important things that's on that doggone GPS.
Right.
It's where are you now,
where you trying to go. Yep.
And this thing gonna fill in everything in between it.
You just need to follow.
Yep. If you don't understand where you are right now, and you don't have a vision of where you want to go, you're gonna be stuck. You're gonna be stuck all day. That's powerful.
And you got to stick with it, man, because it could take a year, could take 2 years, could take 2 months, could take 6 months. I don't think it's ever where you get there where you at the time that you want to, but the goal is to keep going, because once you start going that way, you just turn around coming back, you might as well, stick it out. Man,
this podcast is so good, brother.
I love talking about this. We go 5 hours. I know
we can go 5 hours. Listen, man, you have built teams and have led thousands and thousands of people and spoken in front of massive crowds. What is your biggest lesson that you have learned when it comes to dealing with leadership?
The biggest lesson I've learned. I heard somebody say this one time. Once you decide what you want, and you have that in your mind locked in, that it doesn't. I think I've learned when it comes to leadership that you might be the only one on that path, but you got to keep going. You know what I'm saying? It's not like if 10,000 people say no, that don't mean that 10,000 people are right. That just means 10,000 people said no. And so I think on the leadership part, you got to know that once you decide on it, you just got to keep going, man. You got to make that decision. And to say the answer would be belief has to be in you.
Ooh.
You know what I'm saying? It has to be in you to where once you believe in it, because anybody who has ever had success in life or anything, whether it's, people gonna talk about you, they're gonna laugh at you. That's the first thing that happens. They start to criticize you, and some people bag out right then. No, you got to stick with it. You got to stick with it. You got to stick with it.
Was leadership something that came naturally to you, or did you have to grow and work at it?
I think I had to grow and work at it, because I never really wanted to do that. I always wanted to be this person over in the corner. That's why when I did sales, when I was cool with me, because I didn't have to be around anybody. I just go do my own thing. So it's something I had to work on and keep working on, because I don't know if I'm the best leader, but it's something that I have to keep working on a daily basis. No, I don't. So I think that question is, are leaders born or are leaders made? I think it's a combination of both. I think you have to, it's a combination of both. I don't think it's just, you come out the womb a leader.
Gotcha. What do you think the hardest part, man? Because, most people, they got their job, they may manage, 2-3 people at a time or whatever. What do you think the hardest part about leading people that most people don't talk about?
The hardest part about leading people is, man, what's the hardest part about leading people? Leading yourself. Once you get that belief in leading yourself, then people will follow that because they got to see that.
There you go.
You know, they got to see you believing in you and doing the thing that you do for them to follow you. You know, it's easy. Now it's easy in corporate America because, you know, people got a salary. So, you know, some people consider themselves leaders because they're, you know, they manage 20 people at FedEx or 30 people. Well, the question would be, if those people didn't have a salary, would you still be able to lead them?
Would you feel?
If they volunteer, you know, you dealing with a paid army in corporate America.
Right.
Outside of that, you're dealing with a volunteer army. So you got people that you're leading and you getting them to show up, and it's not guaranteed money for them in anything, but you're painting a vision and a picture for them to see something that's coming in the future, and they got to believe in you stepping that way so they can step that way. If I'm getting a salary and I know that if I don't show up, I can get fired. That's different. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's, and I think a lot of people figure that out as they stepped out to be a leader and then realize, wait a minute, there's a different ball game when you out here.
Different ball game.
Yeah.
You know, man, you've done a lot, man. We fast forward until today. What does success mean to you now compared to back in the day when you first started?
You mean success for me in life or in business?
Life, business, life. What?
Oh,
like,
I think
I'm pretty sure when we both in our younger, success
you know,
meant one particular thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? When you look
the
back,
the Benzes, the houses, and all that, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I think now it's more. I'm not knocking any of that. I think that's great to have, but I think now success is, oh man, it's being able to do the things that you want to do.
That's good.
Well, I mean, when you want to do it, but that was always part of it too. Growing up, that was always a part of it too. Let me think of something else. When I think of success now, I think
Well,
wow.
Let me ask you like this. Let me ask you, do you feel like you're still in grind mode now, or has things shifted for you?
Well, I'm not. I don't think I'm in grind mode, but I do believe that I will be, quote unquote, doing some kind of grind thing the rest of my life. Because I think when you stop, you kind of, I think it should be something that we all should be, you know, getting up every day focusing on. I don't think you should get up and say, well, I'm like that word retire. You know what I'm saying? I think, you know, I saw my father when he taught school for 30 years and he retired 7-8 months later, he was gone.
Wow. Because
he was so used to getting up, doing something every day. Now, if you retired and you got a lot of money but then a lot of people don't, you know, you could say, well, you could travel, but some people don't want to travel. Some people are so used to doing certain things. That's why I believe that you should always do something productive every day. Now it could be when you got enough money, you can just, you know, your production would be traveling to different countries or going to different cities. And I just believe you should be doing something. I don't think that you just should be sitting back and saying, I'm done doing anything. I'm just going to relax now.
Right.
I don't, you know, I just think a person success now is, you know, focusing on something that you want to do. Like me talking about this stuff here, I see myself doing that 85. I see myself, you know, because this is what I like talking about. This is like, I mean, you know, so I can't see myself stop doing this.
You know,
What's
something that we talking about, you know, as we talk about grind time and things changes, early on, we grinding because we want that Bentley. We grinding because we want the flashy cars or a big old house or nice suits or whatever. But as we get older, that grind, we're still grinding, but the why behind that grind could change, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm at the point now where it's like I want to make sure. One of my biggest fears, man, is that I want to make sure that I leave something for my kids and that I leave a good name for my children. So when they look at me, they want to talk about how your daddy was respected. You know what I'm saying? That's one of my things now. When you think back now, what is one of your biggest fears that you have right now?
That my time is cut before I get around to talking to the world about this kind of stuff. That, I got so much that I want to say and do that maybe I don't get, my time is cut before I can get out and speak on stages or talking to people over the internet like this and just getting all the information out. I just believe that for the next 20, 25 years, I want to be, because I just did a little, I'm doing a course now with a guy, and we're talking about, he's a trainer for, is it Brandon Burchard? If you're familiar with him. Yeah. And so he asked, what's the 3 words if somebody asks you that you want people to think about with you? And the 3 words are sincere, humorous, and thought-provoking. Sincere, humorous, and thought-provoking. So when I lead people, I want them to say, well, this guy's kind of funny. You got a little stand-up comedy that he does. He just left me with something to think about. Because that's one of the things I said, if I had a tombstone and if it was on there, it would say that, here lies a guy who helped me change the way I thought, or, somewhere in my thinking. I want you to think about not just what somebody's telling you, think that thing out, so don't just accept what somebody says. Think about it, have thought-provoking conversations about that. And so, back to what you said, the biggest fear is that I don't get around to enough people. I don't get out enough, before, God says, hey, let's go.
That's good, man. That's good.
Yeah.
Man, we can talk all night long.
I know.
Man.
I know. We can go. Yeah.
What's going on with Tony Fleming now? What's next? What you got going on?
I got my pod. I started the pod 2.5 years ago. Okay. And that was one of the reasons I started it was that I was going through that woe is me with my foot. I went through that deeply, man. I think everything that I talked about and trained on, I had to use in my life because, even once they did the 2 surgeries, and they said, okay, you're good. It took 8 months or so for me to heal. So I had a boot on. I had the little knee cart thing. What's the little knee? So I'm on that. And I'm thinking, why me and all this? So I jumped on the microphone and turned my laptop on and started this podcast called Elite Psyche 100. Elite Psyche 100. And, start interviewing people and talking to people. But I realized too, and I'm saying this to you, I don't know how long your pod has been around, but it takes a while to get, you got to go for a minute to get people to hear you and see you, because it's so many people out here. You got all the big dogs jumping in. Everybody is out here. So you gotta be around for a minute for them to know that you dead serious. So here I am 2.5 years later on YouTube. I got probably 12,000 subscribers. I wanted to have 20,000 by now, but I don't. But I still focus on that. I ain't really started monetizing yet. I don't have enough views yet. But that's a lot where my focus is. And speaking, out here, my website, TonyFlemingSpeaks.com is something that, I'm putting out everywhere because, that's my thing. I want to talk about my experience. I want to talk about how I can help people. I go into the schools and I talk to kids. I think, really the people that you need to get in front of early is the third graders and the fourth graders, because that's where you really get programmed at that age. That's called early childhood programming. And at that age, that's why you can, that's why you hear the saying, what is it? I can't think of the quote, but it's from the third and fourth graders. If they don't learn to read and they don't get to a point, they call it from school line to prison line or something like that. Because around that point, if you're not, if they're not at a point where they're reading on a certain level, they already know where they're going from there. They can already tell you the pipeline.
They say they build prison systems around that.
Based on that, testing that you have and things like that. So, that's not something that, you can put out there and hype up on Instagram that you talking to third or fourth graders. But, I like doing that. Going into corporate America and talking to them about sales and, the mindset, because I believe sales is strictly mindset and building relationships with people. I don't think that sales is, where you go in and you just highly aggressive. That's the picture they have for salespeople. Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of the opposite of that. I think it's relationship building. You're giving people what they want. So, speaking about that, training about that, I've been working on a book for years. I stopped, started back, started over.
When's it gonna be complete?
I don't know, because I think it's so much stuff happening to my life. I think that's probably why they complete. I got to go back and put that in. Right. And what I really need to do is just get the book out, man. I need to because see, I probably got 3-4 books in me, but I got to get one out. Whether it's a doggone ebook or something, I got to get that out and then go from there. But I'm so, I got to get this in there. I got to do that. I've started over. I don't know how many times, and some of the stuff I've lost. And but yeah, that's another thing that I'm working on.
What's the name of your YouTube?
It's called Elite, ELITE, Psyche, PSYCHE. You know how many people misspell psyche? Okay, but it's like PSYCHE 100, Elite Psyche 100. Because I think,
go ahead.
A lot of
How'd you come up with that name? Well,
through my readings, I know that a lot of people early on get their psyche damaged by being in different environments, hearing from certain people. So the goal is to build this elite psyche. And my thing was, I'm gonna interview people who had some kind of success in life, whether it's, whatever it is, whatever. It don't have to be this major success, but in the point of me interviewing them, something will come out where you hear that something in there where their psyche changed or something that they heard. But I always felt like people get damaged early and their psyche really holds them back. So my goal is to help people create what I call it elite psyche. And I think it was something that I didn't see anybody out here really, emphasizing that term and stuff. So I just said, really, I did elite psyche. But then when I went to YouTube, somebody grabbed that right quick. And so I added 100 on it.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
We definitely put it up there on the actual comment. So it's going to be out there. So when people look at this episode, they'll be able to see how to actually get it.
That's kind of what you see behind me too, that EP, that purple elite psyche.
Yeah. Yep. The psyche. Well, man, listen, I know I want to be respectful of the time. We could have went listen, there's so many ways.
We come back and do it again.
Let's do it again. Let's run it back.
Yeah.
Man, I really appreciate you, man, just coming on the podcast, sharing your wisdom, your raw, authentic self. As always, you've always brought it. I've always enjoyed listening to you and your mindset. So that we're gonna run this show back. We're gonna do it again.
I just hope somebody got something from this, man, because I'm always talking, and I notice other people when I see their pods is like they might be a little bit more precise than me because I'm just talking. So I don't know if people grabbed anything from it, but I hope that you did. And I guess what I can leave you all with is the thing that I talked about. Eye gate, ear gate, mouth gate. Just remember that. You just gotta just keep saying it, keep hearing it, keep looking at it until it happens for you. Because it happens first in your mind sight. Then you see it. Once you get it locked in there, then you'll see it come into fruition. But we gotta be locked in there. So that's one thing that nobody can block you from doing. Nobody can keep you from thinking that way. Nobody can keep you from visualizing what you want to visualize. They just can't. They can't, because on the inside of you doing what you want to do. I remember Les Brown telling that story about little girl. Some guy jumped on this guy, little guy, and beat him up and held him down. And the guy said, "Well, you can't hold me down because I'm standing up on the inside."
I'm gonna stand up on the inside.
So people can't block you from stuff.
Right.
You got it in your mind.
That's good. That's good, man. Man, listen, go ahead real quick. Tell the people how they can actually get in contact with you. I know we put a couple of your sites up there.
Yeah. You just Facebook, Tony Fleming. I'm on there. Instagram is Tony Fleming, or I think it might be on Instagram. It might be Mr. Tony Fleming. 1M. TikTok, Tony Fleming. I'm out there, and then the Elite Psyche 100 is the YouTube page.
That's good. That's good.
So
we're gonna bring the show back. We're gonna do another episode because there's so many ways we could go. So we're gonna have to do another episode, a follow up, and so we can go.
Do that. If anybody watching it, go to the Elite Psyche 100, subscribe, and then look at one of the little videos and put it in the comment section. I saw you with Chris.
That's
I
it.
saw you just.
And they're gonna get a copy of your book when it's released. When the book finally comes out, you get the copy of my book. Get a copy of it. Well, man, listen, I appreciate you, Mr. Fleming.
All right.
As always, man, if there's anything that I could do over here to help you in your journey, anything I could do to help you in success, man, I'm just a phone call away. As always, anything I can do to help you, don't hesitate. Just reach out to me. Give me a shout.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
All right, man.
Good night.
I appreciate you, brother.
Okay. All right.
Listen, as always, everybody, listen. It's another episode. Another episode down. Man, we are doing our stuff, man. There's so many different directions we could have went tonight with Mr. Fleming, because he is a wealth of information. He is doing the doggone thing over there in the city of Atlanta, Georgia. We didn't even get to talk about some of the stuff he got going on right now, but when we run this show back another time, we're gonna get deeper and deeper. This show is not about a particular company. It's not about a particular thing that you're, company that you're doing or something like that. But we want to talk about the mindset that it takes, that one has to have in order to achieve true levels of success. So that's what this show is all about. And so we're going to have, people from the industry of network marketing. We might have people from, we might have some doctors on here. We might have some lawyers on here. Right now I'm actually talking to a congresswoman that's all over the internet. So we gonna see. We gonna see if we can make that pull together. But it's about the mindset. In this world right now that we're going on, there's a lot of political stuff going on, and I know sometimes we can get caught up in the weeds and not fully understanding of the mindset of these different politicians. We'll talk about that as well, in order for you to get to your next level. All right, so it's not really about Republican, it's not about Democrat, it's about the mindset that a person has when they're going and how they vote. We're gonna talk about that. But listen, y'all, we here every Thursday. Now, next Thursday, y'all, I'm gonna be honest with you, we're not gonna be here. We're gonna take a little break. Next Thursday is my actual birthday. My birthday's on the 15th. So So I'm not going to actually air this show. I'm actually, if all goes well, I'm actually going to be in the DR, enjoying myself in the DR, and be doing some content. If everything goes well right now, things maybe a little up in the air, trying to figure it out. So hopefully on my birthday next week, I'm actually going to be in the DR. So we'll not have a show next week, but the following week we'll be back. 20th, there will be a show on the 20th. And sometimes we got to shift. Which is simply a plug for, y'all know my book. Y'all know, your boy got the book out there. It's time to shift. There it is. It's time to shift. Right now available on Amazon.com. Amazon.com. There's a little QR code right there, so you can take you directly to the actual book, so you can actually purchase that. And we want to get you a copy of the book. Also, our Cash App. Check out our Cash App, y'all. I think it's somewhere down here. I don't know where it's at. Somewhere it's going to scroll at the bottom. There it is. Go to my YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is @OnTheGrindCoach, @OnTheGrindCoach.com. That's for your YouTube. @OnTheGrindCoach. That's the YouTube stuff. I don't know if it's .com or not, so it's not there. But go to YouTube. It's on the @OnTheGrindCoach. All right. If you want to do Cash App your boy something. There it is. It's $. On the grind coach. $. On the grind coach. So, y'all, listen, I have thoroughly enjoyed myself tonight. I know we had, I don't know, listen, I don't even know what's going on camera. It looked fuzzy for a long period of time, then all of a sudden it just got cleared up. So it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? Things happen and we just keep it moving. One thing about life, it ain't always going to work out the way it was planned, baby. That's one thing for sure. All right, but we keep it moving and we keep going. So listen, I have thoroughly enjoyed myself. Another episode down on the Grind Coach. Y'all listen, check me out on the 20th. We're going to be right back here as always. Don't talk about it. Be about it. I'm out. Peace.